And welcome back, everybody, to another week at Beyond the Trailer Park. And holy shit, yes, this is not Monday. What the fuck? Well, we can blame that on our guest, kind of, sort of. But hey, what else is there going to be to do on a Sunday except, talk about non-religious stuff and apparently drink beer. So, first of all, joining me in the studio, of course, is Ms. Samantha Mondegreen.
Hey.
Her and her beer. Yes.
It's just a few, I promise. I've been good.
Yeah. And of course, all the way from Pennsylvania, we have Beth. How's it going over there?
Howdy, howdy. It's going.
That's good.
It's going well.
I was going to say, Sam and I are freezing our asses off, but that's where our other guest says the Acadian joke comes in. So, Callie, Miss Callie Wright, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You are very welcome.
Well, thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you. And just so you know, it's not really Callie's fault. She works on Mondays, so we made a special exemption for her. It's the one and only Callie. Oh, she's doing the heart finger. She's worth it. She's worth it.
And then some.
So
Aww.
I know. It's like we just love each other. But there's lots of us to love. Right? Right. You got it. So why we wanted Callie to join us, and it's been like a year, more than a year since we had you on this show.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so it's like long overdue anyway. She and I have been on Holy Crap together a couple of times since, but that doesn't count on this show. That's Shuzin's gig, so we'll leave that with him. But yeah, aside from the fact being completely overdue, a lot of shit has changed since the last time you were on, and not
Really, like what?
Good. Oh, I don't know. Some people have elected some kind of dumbass. I don't know. People in North Carolina are fucking crazy, except for the people that we know.
Right.
Boda, not you, Dobler, no. But the rest of the fucking North Carolina people, let me tell you. No.
I don't know. Photo's still a little crazy. I don't know.
Well, okay, yeah. And I guess we can make an exception for the Elliots, too. They're not so crazy. But, the rest of you people, like, what the fuck? So, yeah. Things have, and Beth and I have talked about this a lot, and our sort of working theory is, the religious nutters kind of lost the marriage equality gig, and so now they're targeting full bore on transgender folks. And then, of course, we had that thing with the voting, and everything kind of went since then.
And regretfully, it's going to go even more downhill. And
I know.
I mean, just to set up why I had asked Callie if she would join us, and part of the reason why is I went to my old platform where I did radio before, and there was a conversation that just... It took me a couple of days to settle down. And basically it came down to that HB2, which is a North Carolina bathroom bill, is just guys wanting to go piss in the ladies' restroom. And that's all it is. And it really bothered me because I probably would not have said anything anyways, because it would have been a wall of woo, so it would have been just pointless. But we're going to play a clip of the conversation that got me going, and the point of the clip is not to pick up on the individuals that are speaking, but it's the sentiment that one of the speakers, which will be quite obvious, presents, is that it's just about, guys wanting to go to the bathroom in the girls' restroom, and that's not it. And the other speaker really had no clue what the bathroom bill was, so I wanted Callie to come on to, even though I know the basics, I consider myself an ally, but after hearing that, I considered myself a really weak ally because I just sat there, I didn't even know how to respond to it. And that's what I'm hoping Kelly can help all of us, not just myself, but Deb and Sam. I mean, we're all allies, but help us get past that impasse. Like, as I said, saying anything at that point would have been pointless because I would have been speaking to a brick wall. So if you want to play the clip, we can get an idea.
Some bits have been altered to protect identities because we don't want to just like hey, look at that asshole, they don't know what they're talking about. So and she's altered the voices because these are radio personalities, so she didn't want people just to kind of go because
and they're people I know.
Yeah, they're people and also if it's just ignorance, then the cure for that is education and not necessarily ridicule. So okay, so we will, it's just a short clip, but we'll play that so everybody gets an idea of where Beth's coming from.
Oh, hey, trust me, I know. We got back at 5 a.m. this morning from the ACC championship game, which, just put it out there. I know Tim brought it up about on the last show about Michigan not getting in. And we tried to help them by knocking Clemson out. We came close, but Clemson's got a lot of weapons, and you can't make mistakes against a team like that. And so, but we made it interesting, lost by 7, and we're getting ready to, I think it's the 29th of December, we'll be playing in the Belk Bowl. It used to be, it had many different names in the past, but it's down in Charlotte, North Carolina, against the team I like to call Arkansas, but Arkansas. I
like Arkansas.
So it should be fun. Yeah, it's got a ring to it. The good thing is, and people think I'm crazy, it's still a Tier 1 bowl game, so it still pays pretty well. But it's only, Charlotte's 3 hours from Blacksburg, so it'll be easier for fans to come instead of, they talked about going back down to Orlando, but we were just down in Orlando for the championship game, which is normally in Charlotte. But they moved it around because of the stupid bathroom bill that North Carolina passed, and everyone's boycotting tournaments and stuff in North Carolina. So, whatever you believe on that situation, that's fine. I'm not trying to change anybody's mind. I just think when it comes to losing money in the economy, then sometimes you have to go, we're losing a ton of money. Should we just not make it a law and just let people decide what they want to do on their own? Stop pushing stuff on people. That's just me.
I have no idea what you're talking about, so you're going to have to fill me in, because I'm sure there's other people out there that are like, what the hell am I just get into? I have no idea what he's talking about. Yeah. North Carolina passed a bathroom bill that prohibited guys from going in the women's bathroom and women from going in the guys' bathroom. Oh, well, that's going to screw up all the players right away.
I know. But the thing that cracks me up is there's nothing on the books that says you can't go in there now or you can go in there now. It's all based on ethics, kind of. I guess ethics would be the, not ethics, but what's the word I'm looking for? You just say, hey, I'm not going to go in there because, I don't need to be in there. But whatever. Do what you want. But I don't think there needs to be laws passed for that. But ACC has pulled all their tournaments out of North Carolina right now because of that. And a lot of other places have moved stuff out, championship games and stuff, out of North Carolina. So they're losing tons of money for their economy. So
that seems a little absurd to me. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. Not the law. I don't care about the law. I really don't. It's, it's just common sense being applied here. But the ACC boycotting that just seems kind of absurd.
I don't disagree with you. I do not disagree with you at all. I think it's stupid because then you're giving light to the issue. And it's like you're fighting, and it kind of ties in with the show tonight. It's kind of like you're fighting an argument with negativity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're putting out, well, we're not going to do this because of this. And so I see it both ways, and I just think it's stupid because it's amazing how much it's like we did. We had our Title IX training last week at work, and Title IX, for people who don't know, is a state mandate for sexual harassment and sexual, assault and all that. And everything that they talked about is basic common sense. You don't go up and touch another person without, an invitation.
Unless you're a spirit.
Yeah, like on the previous show, go. Tim Motley knows that firsthand. And I think Tim should follow Title IX against that spirit. But anyway, but yeah, so it's
Wow.
Like, so first of all, I just want to say that it sounds like these two don't need to ever be discussing literally anything but sports ever.
Yeah.
That was about the most scintillating analysis I've ever heard in my life.
In their defense, yes and no, they are both very highly intelligent people, and I think that's what really caught me by surprise. And as I said, I'm not going to mention who these people are, just because they wouldn't know how to respond to any type of reaction. But it's not just those two. I've run into this, especially in the town I live in. I mean, I carefully, for lack of a better word, kind of broached the subject with a couple people that I thought were kind of open-minded about it, and most of them really have no freaking clue. What is HB2?
Yes.
It's certainly not, well, the boys go here and the girls go here,
Yeah, that's the sentiment. It is basically boys want to go into the girls' bathroom. What is HB2?
I mean, so basically what it is that it says whatever is marked on your birth certificate is the restroom that you have to use, is kind of what it comes down to. There are other things in it, but that's sort of the really contentious part of it. And how it came about in the first place was Charlotte, the city council in Charlotte was going to pass an anti-discrimination law, actually adding gender identity and expression to their human rights code. Basically explicitly giving trans folks the right to use the restroom that corresponds with their identity. And so in response to this, before Charlotte City Council had the chance to do what they needed to do, the North Carolina State Legislature called an emergency session, and in something like 22 hours or something like that, wrote, proposed, and passed HB2, which was directly a response to that Charlotte City ordinance. It's basically, it comes down to a basic denial of who trans people are. I mean, that's what it really comes down to. Because when people say, it's trying to keep men out of the women's restroom, I would like to give some people the benefit of the doubt and say that is innocent ignorance. But I mean, what that really is that they see trans women as men in disguise, because that's generally how society sees us. Is as men in disguise trying to trick people and hide people, and that's literally, people in bars call trans women traps because they feel like we're like trying to trick men into having sex with us and like, surprise penis, And so there's this entire narrative in society surrounding the fact that trans people are deceiving everyone, pretending to be something that we're not, and oftentimes for some nefarious purpose. And that's what this comes down to. It's a very essentialist idea of gender. It's, your parts equals who you are. What's marked on your birth certificate is who you are. Your chromosomes is who you are, and how you identify or how you feel on the inside means absolutely nothing for that. So, I mean, that's what it really comes down to.
The ironic part is that if you were to go with what's on your birth certificate, that's when you are being something you're not. They're accusing people of being the opposite of what they're trying to be authentic, and they're being accused of being fake.
Yeah, I mean, well, and I think, Beth, you were right in the beginning when you were saying, well, they've kind of lost the marriage equality thing, and I mean, and there's plenty of people still fighting that fight in little ways that they can, and
Yeah.
trying to keep gay people from being able to adopt and those kinds of things. But I think at this point that's more performative. Like they kind of know that that's a lost fight, but they're doing it because they have to, because value.
Oh, they've actually, some of the pundits within the right have actually admitted that they have lost the marriage equality fight, and they're tactic now. And if you follow the Reich from the modern day inception, which I consider 1980 and forward, they have hopped from one hot button social issue to another to try to advance their overall agenda, which, if you are familiar with the Wedge document, which I've mentioned numerous times, as well as Dave Foda has too, it's their plan. They've gone from abortion to LGBT to gendered rights, and that's why they're now their focus. Well, and if you want to go back even further, racism was part of it too, and the rights of women. So it's been an ongoing thing. So regretfully, y'all are in the crosshairs.
Yeah, and so and that's the sort of the double-edged sword that visibility is, because obviously you can't have progress without visibility. Things can't get better without visibility, but visibility also brings that kind of backlash. I mean, when I very first started my show was when the first sort of rumblings of bathroom bills started to happen. I mean, our fourth episode was about bathroom bills, specifically about one in Kentucky where they were actually offering a bounty to people if they found someone in the wrong bathroom, quote unquote, and reported them. They would get like $2,500 or something silly like that.
And could you imagine if that actually passed? You would have people crawling under the fucking stalls trying to see because they want the money.
Yeah. Well, right, and that's the conversation that I have with people. Like I spent 28 years of my life going into men's bathrooms. I saw literally no one else's penis ever.
Yeah.
Literally none ever. And so, I mean, if you're going to be inspecting people, you're the one who is literally admitting that you're a sexual pervert. Yes. Like if you're going to be inspecting people in bathrooms, it's, yeah.
And I don't even get what they think the goal would be. Like what they were saying, well, it's just guys wanting in the women's restroom. Why? I don't know any sort of, straight cis guys who have any interest in going in the women's bathroom.
There's a couple of layers. Basically, they see it as sexual predation. So the first thing is that, generally conservative men, especially religious men, it's sort of that benevolent sexism. I mean, that's a shitty term, but you know what I mean? Where they feel like it's their duty to protect all these. Yeah. They feel like it's their duty to protect all of the helpless women from all the predators in the world. And so now basically they've invented this class of people who they can say are those predators. So it fulfills a couple of things. It fulfills the impulse to feel like they're white knights defending these poor helpless women. And it also fulfills the impulse to demonize and otherize a group of people that they don't know anything about.
Well, Callie, we'll get one dinosaur out of the room, because you and I have talked about this before. In fact, you've given me some resources. A conversation I was having before you bailed my ass out. So, how many transgendered individuals have been arrested and convicted for predation?
It depends on in what context you're talking about, because that has most certainly happened. If we're being real, transgender people are human beings. There are transgender people who are sexual predators. That is a thing that has happened. But I think when it gets right down to the point, if we're talking about somebody being assaulted in a bathroom, or someone having access that they quote unquote shouldn't have to a gendered space, then leading to that, then the answer is 0. And there are a couple of stories that the right will generally put forth of examples of this happening. but they never pan out to be what they're presented as being. Like there are a few examples of a trans woman who was in the women's spa area and exposed herself to a couple of 17-year-olds. What really happened was that she was in the adult section doing her own thing. These teenagers were snooping around in an area they weren't supposed to be in the first place and happened to see her. So yeah, and the dean of the college actually came out and said that's actually what happened, and in the right just took that story and ran with it. There was a case in Canada.
Todd Stearns probably.
And there was a case in Canada of a person who claimed to be a trans woman. I don't know that there was ever any sort of check, like if she lived, as a trans woman, or if she actually claimed to get into the space or whatever, into a domestic violence shelter and ended up raping someone. But this is a person who was a known convicted sexual predator who shouldn't have been there in the first place. So again, more to the story. Like
that's not, and neither of those places are a fucking bathroom.
Right, exactly. So, all of these different stories that you hear, there's always more to it, and it never turns out to be that way. I mean, it really just does come down to fear mongering and the fact that like we need somebody to hate.
And the thing that it always gets me, because it's a way of men to get into the women's restroom so they can rape women and molest children. And I'm thinking, so all the little boys that go to the men's room with all of these supposed sexual predators, just fuck them, right?
I shit you not. In April, when this thing was like really, really going hot, I went and just looked, and I was able to find, just like quick Google search, I was able to find 15 cases of men arrested for molesting young boys in bathrooms.
Yes.
And I mean, that was just, I mean, I think I literally just Googled like bathroom sexual assault, and I was able to find like 15 of those cases. And so it was like where's the outcry? What, like, do you not care about our little boys, or our little girls the only ones you care about?
You're not wrong. You're not wrong at all. Like, for example, like if we take out the Boy Scouts and the Catholic Church and all the obvious ones for a second, the National Hockey League is having huge people come forward and press charges against their hockey coaches for molestation and for terrible acts. And these are even things that you don't hear about in the news, like the Boy Scout and the church. That's what you always hear about, but you don't hear about the hockey league or the other things that are going on. Like, these are huge hockey league players that were known in the National League in America, coming forward in the same respect, and nobody's going in suddenly putting cameras in the hockey league bathrooms at all.
Well, and that tells you very plainly that sexual assault is not what they give a shit about. They really could care less about sexual assault. What they care about is trans people being different and them wanting to push us out of society is what it really comes down to.
And on a even more basic level, what they care about is that conformity, right? Because before they started targeting transgender people, I heard lots of times too, like, oh, don't let, watch those gay people in the bathroom too. Like, I heard that, or don't let the gay guy go into the locker room with young people. That kind of shit.
I know growing up, not even growing up, probably even as short as 10 years ago, one of the things I always heard as far as being gay and being lesbian was, oh, you were probably raped by a guy. And I'm like, no, I was actually raped by a girl. So I don't fit your timeline, do I?
Exactly.
It's like, and then they try to turn around and say, that's why gay, you actually enjoyed it. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, sure, I enjoyed it. It's like, having my face rebuilt. No, it's like, it's like Callie said, they just want somebody to hate and somebody to fearmonger against. And that, to me, that's what it comes down to. And then you have, on top of that, you have, for lack of a better word, the ignorance of people that don't truly understand. And I think part of it comes to, I'll use the word definition for lack of a better word, but you had mentioned it earlier, Callie, about, gender identity. And I know you're speaking to the choir here, but what exactly is gender identity? I mean,
How much
I
time
don't know
do
how
we
to put
have?
this. Well, okay, a simplistic view of gender identity, because I know we've heard terms like gender fluidity, and I mean, I know, especially you, I know you could take it even further than probably even my brain would handle, but just in basic, what I don't like using the word makes you different, but what's different between gender identity? You know what? Me being gay. What's different from my being gay and you being transgender?
Well, okay, so basically we're talking about the difference between sexual orientation and gender identity, and the easiest way to put that is sexual orientation is who you love, who you have sex with, and gender identity is who you are as a person. It's your own sort of internal sense of your gender and who you are as a person. And sort of on the axis of gender, generally we speak of two different things, your gender identity and your gender expression. Your expression being your outward expression of your gender on the spectrum of masculine to feminine. And identity is on a spectrum of masculine to feminine as well. Not all trans people are binary, like you sort of alluded to. The co-host of my show is genderqueer, does not identify as either male or female, and that's a thing as well. But basically, what it comes down to is it's your own internal sense of who you are and who you're supposed to be, as opposed to however your body happens to be arranged or who you've been told you are your entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Well, and it's something you and I have talked about, Deb, with
yes.
I kind of relate to, I know I'm probably sticking my foot in my mouth, and I apologize. I know growing up, and I'm talking when I was 10, 11 years old, I've always known that I was, I'll say different for lack of a better word, but I never had any role models growing up. My only role model at the time that I knew that was different was Renee Richards, the tennis player. And so, and I struggled with, well, do I want to be a boy or am I gay? And I struggled with that growing up, but I had no role models. I mean, and Martina Navratilova, but they actually came out after I did. So it's like, I can see the difference, between, gender identity. I mean, I identify as a lesbian. That's just who I am. I'm not feminine. Well, except for my hair. I'm a little bit neurotic about my hair, but I know guys that are that way too. So, but it's really confusing, and for somebody that has to struggle with it. Yeah, I mean, having to struggle not only within yourself, but then you got the bullshit that society throws on you.
Yeah.
It's like, it's so annoying. And I think, for me, it's like, how in the hell do we help this issue along? How can we be a support to somebody that is going through those issues?
I mean,
and that's where I'm stuck.
Yeah, I mean, holding space is a big thing. And what I mean by holding space is the idea that you don't sort of push someone in one direction or another. Like because a lot of times what people will do, which is very well intentioned, is someone will come to a person and say, hey, you know what? I'm having some gender feels. I'm struggling a little bit with who I am. And then automatically they jump to like, well, let's get some makeup. Let's get some dresses. Let's, automatically, like, let's just fucking go balls to the wall and just make this shit happen. But like, that may not be what that person actually needs or wants, So what I always try to do, the conversation that I typically try to have with people when they come to me and they say like, this is a thing that I'm struggling with, is I say, okay, imagine a hypothetical world in which, you live on a different planet with your friends who would just be absolutely stoked beyond belief for you to do literally whatever you wanted with yourself in your life, whatever that happened to be. So sort of try to imagine a place where societal pressure surrounding gender and all of that didn't exist. And obviously we don't live in that place and never have, so it's a tough thing to imagine, but it's a thought experiment. And so when you do this in this world, imagine the person that you are in this world. and what you dress like, what you talk like, what you act like, what you look like, those kind of things. So that's sort of a thought experiment to get people into the headspace of, what do I actually want? Like, who am I actually as a person? And then once you figure that out, you have to kind of put yourself back into that societal context and figure out, okay, I know what I want, I know who I am. Now I have to figure out what's possible, what's practical, and what I need to do to get there. And yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I can imagine that a lot of people that are trying to sort that stuff out, we don't do much self-exploration, because just the idea of being different is so looked down upon in greater society that it's like, okay, I'm different. That's not a good thing, so I'm just not going to go there.
No, you're totally right. Yeah, it definitely prevents some, you have to work pretty hard to get to the point where you're even okay with asking yourself those questions.
Yeah, I can see that completely.
And yeah, and that's, I mean, that's kind of what it took for me. I mean, I had to ease myself pretty slowly into it. You know, for me, and this is stuff that I've talked about before, but not something I talk about often, is I sort of had myself convinced for a while that it was a fetish. Like, I liked being feminized and treated as a woman during sex, and that it was just a fetish kind of thing. Because, like, you know, that's something that, at least in the context of like the fetish community and stuff like that, that's not really an abnormal thing. You know, like, it's pretty normal for guys to be into that kind of stuff.
You knew that you could find a, quote, home for that.
Exactly. And so I got comfortable there. And then when it would happen and when it was over with, it was like, there's something more here. Like, it's not just sexual. Like, you start to realize that it becomes sort of a matter of identity. And then at some point, at least for me, sort of how it came down was I started struggling with those things. And as much as I tried to push that stuff toward the back of my head, it was overwhelming. And I got to the point where I was like, I'm going to do something very, very bad to myself if I can't, like, figure this out. So, like, I was kind of forced into it, honestly. Like, it wasn't something that, like, oh man, I'm super excited about this, let's go ahead and turn my life upside down. Sweet, that sounds like a fun time. You know, it wasn't anything like that, really. It was just more like, this is serious. I have no choice. I have to start telling people about this. This has to be something that exists outside of my head for once. Like, I have to make it real and tell someone else about it. So that was, yeah.
It's a real misconception, especially that came from the past, I think, that this sort of thing is just like, oh, I just, you know what, I'm just gonna dress, you know, differently and be a girl now, and I can just do that. Or, you know, and historically people thought that gender was just all environmental. So, you know, if there wasn't, what used to bug me is the stories of intersex children that, you know, at birth the doctor, well, you're gonna have to pick one, so pick it now, kind of thing. And just like, oh well, you know, that the genitals look more female, so we'll make her a girl.
Mm-hmm.
And just like that idea that you could raise someone to be a gender and they're just gonna go with it. So,
well, it's the whole nature nurture argument, and absolutely. I have I'll say acquaintances, because I haven't spoke to them in years because they moved away, thankfully. They're twins, and they are transgender, but they were raised in a very conservative household, so it definitely wasn't nurture. Yeah, I have a friend that was born. A friend born intersex. Actually, I have a couple friends that were born intersex, and it's like, it had nothing to do. He didn't realize. Well, she didn't realize until she was almost 20 years old that she was intersex, but she knew something was wrong. What was going on in her head did not match the body that she had. And when she found out, it brought up a lot of issues. I mean, last I knew, she was still dealing with some of those issues, but people think that being transgender or being gay, for that matter, is just throwing a switch, and it's not. I mean,
the thing that makes it hard is that so much of what we associate with gender is sort of environmental. I mean, like if I grew up in a world that didn't have nail polish, I probably wouldn't be stoked on nail polish. You know what I mean? But that's a very gendered thing in society, and like makeup and certain kinds of clothes and like all of the things that we sort of associate with gender. Some of those things are environmental. I don't, and I'm not, I'm not an expert on human psychology or anything like that, but I just. Like, I have a hard time believing that someone is born with a propensity to like dresses. You know what I mean? Like, I think some of that is sort of environmental in that, like, I grow up being, sort of, I guess, for lack of a better word, indoctrinated into the idea that girls wear dresses. So when I figure out I am one, therefore I like dresses. You know what I mean? Like, and but obviously we know there are plenty of women who hate dresses. There are plenty of men who love dresses who are perfectly fine identifying themselves as men and their masculinity, who rock the hell out of makeup and nail polish and dresses, right? So it's more complicated than that,
Well, and if we were in a society that didn't have dresses, then you wouldn't equate being a girl with wearing a dress when you know what you were. You wouldn't be like, oh, well, mom wears a dress, therefore I should wear a dress, kind of thing.
Yeah, and for me, the demarcation point is my physical dysphoria, and that's not to invalidate the identities of people who don't feel the way that I do. But
explain what you're explain dysphoria.
I was going to
briefly.
So, and I want to be clear that I'm speaking for myself and how I know who I am. This is not, this is not a standard by which trans people can be seen as valid or invalid. But for me personally, what sort of sealed it for me is the fact that I am not comfortable with my secondary sex characteristics and my genitalia as they are. It causes me extreme discomfort. The lack of breasts, which I mean I have now thanks to hormones to a degree. My penis, like my broad shoulders, my big hands, those kinds of things. Those things cause me incredible discomfort, and I have a very, very sure sense of the fact that that's not how my body is supposed to be. And so generally that kind of discomfort is what trans people refer to as dysphoria. And not all trans people have it about everything. There are some trans folks who, for whom it's 100% an identity thing and there's nothing physical about it, 100% happy with their bodies the way they are. More power to them. I kind of wish I was because it would save me lots of surgery and money and all of that sort of thing, but that's not where I'm at. So that's for me, how I'm 100% sure of who I am is because of that extremely strong sense of discomfort that I have with the way my body is arranged, and the fact that I'm willing to undergo very expensive, very painful, very drastic surgery to fix those feelings.
Yeah, and I think from the outsider, that sort of difference in approach and difference in in everyone's identity makes it a little harder for us to sort of compute it. For instance, like you said, there are trans people who are quite fine with their body as it is, and they don't feel the need to have surgery. And I know even within the trans community, there are some people that, well, if you don't have surgery, you're not really trans, and things like that. And that's not true. Like, there's all the level, like, hey, I'm okay just to live as my gender. I don't have to, change physical things. Or some people be like, well, I'm okay as long as I got the boobs. Or some people that, I don't have to do, or I want to do all of it like yesterday. There's all the degrees, but from the person who's not only ignorant, but just like I am incredibly cis, like just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So for me, I can understand I don't have the right parts for who I am. But after that, it becomes a little trickier to kind of, process mentally.
Right. Well, and that's, what's so funny about, I mean, taking it back to the whole HB2 thing is people have so many assumptions about what being transgender is. So many of the people who say things like, well, it's men trying to get into the women's restroom, those people would be shocked to find out that trans men exist.
Yes. That's the thing is some of the pictures that were circulating around of the trip, because they're all like, oh, there's going to be some dude in the bathroom with my wife. And some of these trans men are incredibly masculine, and look beefier than probably the person, bitching about this. It was like, oh, would you like me to go in with your wife?
Yeah. Well, and I think there are a couple of reasons for that. One of the practical ones being that, generally speaking, and this is speaking in generalities, obviously there's a wide spectrum, as there always is, but generally speaking, folks who are assigned female at birth and transition to male, hormones do more for their appearance than typically hormones do for trans feminine folks.
Right.
So that's one thing, is there's a little bit less visibility there, and that folks who choose to do hormone therapy and take testosterone usually end up with a bit of a more cis-normative appearance.
Right.
So and then of course misogyny is the other factor that comes into it. But where I was going that was funny is people don't, and this doesn't make it okay. But I would bet you that the people who wrote this law in North Carolina don't realize that if you have sex reassignment surgery, you can get a birth certificate with a changed gender marker on it. So.
Well, I do know one of the caveats, and I don't know if this specifically applies to HB2, but I know some of the other laws that have come down the pike, is that if your birth certificate has been changed, then you're fine.
Yeah, well, and that's a lot of people try to use that as sort of a demarcation point of like who is real and who is valid. Like if if you have the surgery and you have your birth certificate amended, then we're fine with it. Which basically means if you erase all evidence of the fact that you're different, cool, we're good with it. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Because now you're conforming.
Right.
Well, what's bizarre about that caveat, though, there are some within the Reich that are actually actively fighting having your birth certificate changed. They don't want you to be able to normalize, for lack of a better word. We see a lot of times in the news reports, especially about transgender deaths and violence against transgender community, is a lot, although it's getting better. A lot of the newspapers are misgendering intentionally because they don't want, they're intentionally misgendering these people to make a point. They're not real. And
I don't know it's really honestly, because most of the time when that happens and it turns out to be wrong, I see people correct themselves a lot. That's not to say that it doesn't happen, but I think a lot of times I think a lot of times that specific thing is ignorance, and that doesn't make it okay. But I don't know that they're like doing that to try and make a political statement. So much.
There are some. It's getting smaller. I'm noticing it more from right-leaning publications.
Well, yeah, of course that's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but these are the people that are writing these laws. I mean, North Carolina, just how far they're going to carry this, did an emergency session this past week, I think it was Thursday, if I remember correctly, to limit the powers of the incoming Democratic governor.
I'm like, what?
Basically, they wrote a law to throttle his impact. And of course, the outgoing Republican governor who lost and finally did concede the election about a week or so ago signed the bill into law. So they basically have now throttled. I don't know from a constitutional standpoint whether on a state level or federal level how it's going to hold up. But so it's like this is how far these people will go to basically delegitimize people such as yourself and Sam and Celeste and any number of people that I know that are part of the transgender community. And it's going to trickle down because, I mean, it's part of, the Reich is in its death throes, and they're doing whatever they can to gain, make it difficult for all of us.
What I don't get is, like, no one seems to have thought this through, because, I mean, how many months has HB2 been in effect now? It's been at least 6, hasn't it? Or more.
Let me look.
Has there been any indication of them trying to enforce this law? And if so, pardon?
Almost a year. It's February 22nd.
Almost a year. So
wow.
I've not heard of anyone actually trying to enforce this law, or how would they even enforce this law? Like, you don't look, feminine enough to me, drop trow before you even go in the bathroom. Like,
well, and that's the thing. There were several police organizations in North Carolina that came out and said, we're not going to enforce this because it's unenforceable.
Yeah. Like, it's just, there were memes and things going around of, the cop outside the bathroom going, can I check your pants before you go in, and that kind of crap, which it's just, no one's going to do that. Like, absolutely no one is going to do that, and then we get the idiots that, because of course Target came out and said, we want to support transgender people, and we want to make it clear that, you use whatever bathroom you want. And then you got these idiots dragging their children in there to, oh, look, I'm going to put my daughter in this bathroom and no man better come in here, and parading around Target with, hate slogan t-shirts and crap. It's just,
yeah. And what's fun about that is, literally all Target did was put out a reminder of a policy that they had in place forever. Like, that has been Target's policy for quite some time, and they basically put out a statement like, hey, just want to remind everyone this is where we're at. Like, it was literally as innocuous as that. And of course, the funny thing is Walmart has the exact same policy, and no one is boycotting or picketing Walmart because, yeah.
Well, what I find really bizarre about the whole bathroom bill situation, and this is not to make light of the situation, but back in the 70s when I was a child, most of your stores, if they even had a public restroom, you had to deposit a quarter for 3 minutes. So in other words, there were no public restrooms anywhere.
All the bush.
In the front of the in the front of the store, it was called Two Guys, which is a precursor to Walmart and Target, etc. I think it was a regional store in Buffalo. There used to be a one room for men, one room for women, and if you needed to take a shit, you put a quarter in and you got 3 minutes to do it. And if you didn't have enough time, guess what you had to do? Hike up your pants and put another quarter in. And Lord help you if there was somebody waiting to use the same restroom, because, yeah, it caused a lot of problems. I mean, like 40 years ago, it wasn't even an issue. They didn't even have public restrooms. I think restaurants did. I think they've always had to have them. But stores like, Walmart or Target, or they didn't have to provide. In fact, I don't think by law, they don't have to provide a public restroom. There's stores around here that they have restrooms obviously for their employees, but they're not public restrooms. You have to ask to use them.
Yeah.
And I just find it so, I don't know, kind of oxymoronic that, you know, and it's like I was talking to one of the guys I work with, and he goes, well, I've never been into a restroom, where there wasn't a stall. So I don't know what the dude next to me's doing or not. I don't even know if it's a dude. He goes, you know, yeah, it's just, I just find it so silly. I mean, it's not, but it's just the mentality surrounding some of it. It's just, it's laughable.
To me, the easiest thing to do is make it mandatory that stalls go from floor to ceiling, and just do away with gendered bathrooms, period. Like, I don't see the point. Like, you know, and I've said this to a few people. I'm like, okay, men do not use a urinal at home. So why do they have to have a urinal in public? That's just me, though.
I bet they're worried about messes. And to be honest, I think that's kind of a legitimate worry. I mean, it's like that already.
Okay.
I know boys who will pee in a sink. Yeah, you're right, Callie. You're right.
Okay.
Toilet's taken. I need it to go. It's fine. You know, like, just find a Timmy's cup somewhere and just go. You know, no.
But I mean, like, I've been in washrooms where, because honestly, even in, you know, a women's bathroom, it's always weirded me out that there's a gap under the damn stall or over the damn stall. Like, I'm just, why did, you know, that just seems so stupid to me. Like, privacy is important here. Let's make it go from the floor to the ceiling.
Actually, I have seen a couple of places, especially gas stations. Like, I don't know, do you guys have Pilot in Canada?
No.
Okay, it's like a trucker's gas station, where they've got showers and stuff like that. And then a lot of the newer McDonald's bathrooms that I've seen, the bathrooms themselves are like little rooms. Like, there's space above and below the door, but it's just a little bit. But the walls are completely floor to ceiling, and they're actual walls. So like I think there is actually kind of a trend toward that, and like I'm good with that.
Good.
See, the big thing that I noticed there is that like restaurants and public places there, like little places where it's just one or two stalls, those aren't necessarily the issues where you run into problems. It's when you're at a bus station, a subway station, or a concert for a band, for example, and there's a lineup of 20 other cis girls that you have to sit through and be as cis as you possibly can, so they don't judge you between that lineup and getting to your stall. Shit like that is where you run into problems a lot, I find.
Yeah, I actually went to a show at an arena a couple of weeks ago. One of my favorite bands. I was really excited. It was like one of those 10-year anniversary tours where they play the entire album front to back, and it was like super, super excited. I got there and I realized I had to pee, and I was like, shit. And I looked, and of course there was a line, out the door, and I'm like, okay, like, all right, we're gonna get through this. Like, have my face buried in my phone, and for the love of God, don't fucking talk. Luckily, I find that generally speaking, people are a little too wrapped up in what they're doing themselves to care. But it only takes one person who is not that way for things to go horribly, horribly wrong.
Yeah. And I mean, like, when we went to Trans Day of Remembrance, we went to Toronto together, and we drove part of the way in and took the subway the rest of the way because Toronto's horrible for traffic. And I felt bad because I had to go to the bathroom so bad. And there was one subway station that had a washroom. Now, where we were going was it was an LGBT community center. So we knew the destination was fine, but I just couldn't wait. And poor Sam, she's standing outside. She didn't even want to go in with me. I'll just be out here because, we're in a subway with hundreds of people running around and I you just, for me, that's something that I gotta go, I'm gonna go. And it's kind of like, oh geez, that sucks. Because if I had that issue, I would have been sitting there, for another 20 minutes or more trying to, keep myself contained, and it just sucks. It really does.
I mean, to expand the context outside of bathrooms a little bit, I actually have a friend who sort of had an epiphany about the fact that like there are places in society that aren't safe for me to go, that are safe for him to go. And I sort of hatched this idea. There was a Trump rally in Cincinnati, not 10 minutes away from where I lived, and I thought, gosh, how cool would it be to go undercover and like interview people there and like pretend like I'm a dude and that kind of stuff, and like, man, like that would be cool. And it was one of those things that's like one of those like, oh, I'm gonna do this crazy activist thing and it's gonna be awesome, and like people are gonna think I'm so cool, and like and then like the day after I hatched the idea, and of course Celeste is freaking out because of course she is, and and I kind of credit her with talking me out of it, and I was like, like that's really not a safe place for me to be. Like I had talked to my friend Adam about going with me as sort of like a bodyguard, and he was all about it. And he ended up going anyways, but I guess he was having a conversation with a mutual friend of ours and was like, and I don't think Adam actually identified me as the person in the conversation, but Adam was like, yeah, I had a friend who was going to go, but she just ended up feeling like that it wasn't a safe place for her, so she didn't go. And I was having a separate conversation with this friend about something else, and he was like, or no, actually he messaged me because it made him think of me, even though he didn't know it was me that Adam was talking about. He was like, yeah, I was talking to Adam and I just had this realization, and like, what can we do? And I was like, yeah, actually I was the friend in the conversation, first of all, because I guess what had started it was this friend was at the Ark Encounter protest with me.
Okay.
And Eric Hovind gave free Ark Encounter tickets to any of the atheists that were there that wanted to go. And I was like, I just don't feel safe there. And listen, Matt asked me if I was going, and I was like, yeah, I don't feel safe there. And he said that was kind of an epiphany for him. Like, there are places in society that are safe for me, but safe and not safe for you. Like that's not freedom. That's not how this is supposed to work.
And that to me is just so asinine that you or Sam don't or can't feel safe. I mean, I would be hesitant myself to go to a Trump rally, per se, just because I'm not the most feminine of female. I don't hide who I am. Even since I've moved here, I have been mistaken for a boy. When I have my hat on, which is 99% of the time, and if I'm wearing a heavy coat, it's like people mistake me. Like if I ask for the restroom, if it's somewhere I didn't know, and they would send me to the boys' room, and I said, so I'd open my coat and say, "Excuse me."
Yeah, well, that you're not gonna hide. I'm just saying.
It's like, so I mean, it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of a inconvenience for me, where for you actually feel very threatened, and I did that to me is just so wrong. I mean, it's so very wrong.
It absolutely is.
I'm very fortunate in that I haven't really had anything other than like a sort of muttering under your breath, or like shooting me like a really awful, hateful look kind of thing. There was one night where it was like there were a couple of little things that happened. So when Celeste and I got the place that we live in now, we had gotten a couple of things, and then like as we were on our way back, we realized like, oh, there's some stuff that we forgot. We got to get some cleaning stuff and all that. And it was like, we got to work next week, so we got to get this stuff tonight. So we made a trip to Walmart, which is not a place we normally go anyways. But we did because it was late and they were the only place open. And we went, and it was like, I mean, I counted like 3 people who were like very obviously like pointing and laughing at us as we walked by, which is like, I'd be lying if I said that doesn't hurt at all, but at this point,
Yeah.
it's a normal enough thing that it's like it's not going to devastate me. And then as we were checking out, there was this lady sitting on a bench, like on the opposite side of where the checkout lanes were. Like I got the impression she was waiting on, you know, her boyfriend or husband or whoever was with her to finish checking out, and she just kept shooting daggers our way, like with just looking at us and just looked so disgusted at the both of us. And Celeste and I are not shy about like holding each other's hands or like, you know, pecking each other on the cheek and that kind of stuff. And when her boyfriend, husband, whoever was finished, like he walked up to her and like I saw that they were conferring and she was kind of pointing over toward us, and I was like, oh shit, like this is about to get serious. And then they got up to leave, and they were not heading straight for the exit. They were heading like diagonally toward where we were, and Celeste was standing in front of me, because I think she was paying, and I was just kind of standing there waiting for her to finish doing her thing, and I was like, oh my god, is this it? Is this going to be the time that somebody fucking hits one of us, or says something, and like, and it's really disconcerting. It's really hard to explain it if you're not there, but the look on his face and the look in his eyes, I mean, it was terrifying. I mean, it was pure, unadulterated disgust and hate. And that's honestly the first time I've ever seen that in person. And I mean, I've faced down hate preachers, and they didn't have this look on their face, you know. And it was terrifying. And luckily, they turned the other direction and kind of walked off, because I think it was just meant to be sort of an intimidation thing. And, you know, nothing ended up happening aside from that. But that was still really disconcerting. I mean, I sat in I didn't tell Celeste about it when it was happening or right after, because I didn't want to freak her out. And like, as soon as we sat down in the car, I just kind of started crying softly, and she's like, what's wrong? And and I mean, that was terrifying. I mean, I think about that every time I go to Walmart now, even if it's not the same Walmart, because I don't live anywhere near that area anymore.
Yes. And
okay, here's kind of a, sorry, Deb, a hypothetical. I'm in the Walmart behind you. See this going down. What can it, or should, if I see something like that, can or should I do, or should I let it go?
I was gonna ask that.
Great minds. I mean, just, you know,
the only reason I bring it up is when I first moved to where I live now, my girlfriend and I at the time were in one of the local stores, and this woman literally followed us in the store, and I turned around and I just looked at her. I said, do you want us to fuck on the floor for you? Is that what you're expecting us to do? That's how I approach things, but I know that's not always the way you should.
I mean, it's tough, because you never know. Like, some people are going to be, they're going to back off when they're confronted, because they think that they can get away with whatever they're going to do. And as soon as somebody confronts them, they'll back off. Some people will escalate when they're confronted, and you never know the difference between the two. And in all situations, the best thing is to de-escalate the situation and end whatever the encounter is. You know what I mean? You never want to escalate a thing. You never want to turn that into your time to say something witty and you know, get your jabs in at some bigot, right? The idea is, you know, there's a potential for violence here, and we want to end this and get out of the situation as quickly as possible. And it's really hard to know what the right thing is to do in that situation. You know, I mean, you know, if you see somebody, shooting threatening glances and that kind of stuff, I mean, I would say that's a thing to keep an eye on, but I would say probably let it go. But, you know, if it escalates into somebody, you know, yelling or saying stuff, or, I mean, especially physical, you know, definitely the time is then to step in. There's really, really great stuff on the internet if you want to read. Just look up bystander intervention. And there are some really, really great tactics that you can use that let you de-escalate situations like that. And you can prevent violence and prevent things from escalating. And I think that's probably the thing to do.
Because I know,
Well,
like, some of the
go ahead.
times that I've been out with you, I always keep in the back of my mind, like, I kind of keep my eyes open too. And my way of thinking is, if I saw somebody, like, staring like an idiot, or the point and stare thing, my thought process was, then that was when I was going to go over to you and make it known that, hey, this person's not alone. They have a friend here, and I'm cool with who they are. And just by interacting on a more obvious level, that was sort of my thought process, is that anybody who's a dumbass coward is going to see that and go, oh, they have a friend. Well, I guess I better keep my mouth shut, kind of thing.
Yep.
That's how I would do it.
And there have been a couple of times where that's been a thing. At Bobby and Ashley's wedding, at that convenience store, and then at NanoCon when we were at McDonald's.
Yep.
And that whole thing went down, and I had no idea what was even happening, and I didn't find out until later.
I was really disappointed. So if anybody didn't know, we were standing in line at a McDonald's in Nashville, and Callie and Celeste were ahead of. There was Callie and Celeste, and then there was Hugh-Man and Ashley, me, and then Hugh-Man and Ashley. And then there were a couple of jackass rednecks behind them. And the jackass rednecks were doing the, look at that kind of bullshit to Callie and Celeste. And Hugh and Ashley heard it because they were closer to them, and I did not. Now, if I had heard it, I was wearing a glory hole t-shirt at the time with a giant penis. And the quip that apparently they said was, hey, is that a dude in a dress? I was so mad I didn't hear it, because I would have turned around and said, no, but I'm a woman with a dick on my chest. How'd you like that?
Yeah, I just remember a Hugh-Man sort of inching up closer to me, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And I didn't, because I just thought, like, oh, like, there's people getting in line and, like, people want to order food. Like, I didn't think anything about it.
More space.
Right.
Yeah.
And then once we sat down, you all told me what happened, and it's like, it's amazing to know that people have my back in that way. And that's part of the reason that I love this community and, the people.
I love to, when we went to the Hardee's for breakfast, when I got up to the cash, the girl that was there, and she's, your typical sort of early 20s fast food cashier person. And, because Celeste had her anime purse with her. And so this girl's like, well, y'all having an anime convention? And I just looked at her and I said, no, atheists. And I said, but don't worry, I'm a Canadian.
But don't worry, I'm a Canadian.
Were you telling me?
I totally did that.
When I was in a band, we heard a show in Cleveland, and we ended up going to like 7 different hotels, and they were all booked. And it was like, we had driven overnight. It was like 6 o'clock in the morning. We were all dead tired. And eventually we find this one hotel. They were like, you know what, we were booked and we had a cancellation literally an hour ago. So we have one room that you can take. So we did. And so we wake up in the morning to get the continental breakfast with the hotel. And and we asked the lady at the counter, like, what the hell is going on in Cleveland right now? Like, we've been to like 7 different hotels and nobody has rooms. And they're like, oh, there's a big Jehovah's Witness convention in town.
Oh, yes.
and so we get in, mind you, this is me at the time, very much not out. So like fully bearded, wearing black, tight jeans, like very obviously like, yes, we play in a metal band, and there were like 7 of us. And so like we walk into the hotel lobby and we're all just like, because we had like 3 hours of sleep the night before. Yeah. So like there's all these people in like business attire. I mean, there's like 20 or 30 people in this tiny little room wearing, pantsuits and shirt and tie and all this. And we're all like hoodies and tight jeans and band shirts and tattoos and piercings. So we sit down and this lady turns to me and she goes, so, are you guys in a band? Like, yeah, we're in a band. Oh, what kind of music do you play? I'm like, oh, we're metal. Okay. It was just such a great awkward experience.
Oh, it totally was. I love that too. You having an anime convention?
Well, what this reminds me of, like the
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say what this reminds me of, Kelly. You did an interview on the radio. I believe it was in where you live, or
Cincinnati. WLW.
And, and what blew me away was basically, in my mind, you were walking into the lion's den. I mean, it was really the heart of your activism, for lack of a better word. I mean, and you know, the interviewer, he was pretty cool. He, you know, could have been a real prick, but you basically went into the interview and just were you. And just like, you know, oh no, we played metal. You just not very nonchalantly de-escalated what could have been a horrid interview. I mean, if anybody's ever seen any Fox interviews with American Atheists or any Lori Gaylor from FFRF, they just, you know, that's what was going through my mind when you said you were doing this interview. And I'm thinking, but you went in there and you just totally knocked it down a few notches, and it was just like any other interview. You know, it was when HB2 was just starting to roll around. It was probably around April, if I remember correctly. But
yeah,
and I think that's what important.
I was shocked.
I think that's
honestly.
Yeah. Oh, you slayed that interview, in my opinion. I mean, like, I mean, you literally.
Here's the thing: I don't normally listen to conservative talk radio, so I really didn't know exactly what I was getting myself into. Like, I mean, I knew I was like talking to a conservative radio host. He's not the worst one on the station, and that was pretty much what I knew. You know, it's like he's the guy, like, he's conservative, but he's not generally the type to just straight up be a jerk to somebody. And that's really all I knew going in. And I mean, I was ready for it. I mean, I was loaded for bear. Like, I was ready to go all out, guns blazing, and that was just not how it ended up. And honestly, I you know, I want to take a little credit for it, because I obviously could have gone off on the guy if I wanted to, because he did say some pretty ignorant things. But I mean, he at least sort of genuinely seemed to come from a place of, you know, it's more of a libertarian sort of like, well, I don't care what you do as long as you're not hurting anybody. You know, yeah. So when I was on with Bill Cunningham, that was a little bit of a different story, because Bill Cunningham is the asshole on the station. He's the guy that tells atheists that they're going to hell and that he'll pray for them and stuff. Because basically how those interviews happen is there's a local atheist group here who has a relationship with WLW. So anytime church-state separation stuff comes up, they call. And they know that, you know, atheists are generally liberal people. So when there was a bathroom thing come up, they reached out to this atheist group and were like, hey, do you want to have somebody come on? And my friend who used to do press for that group said, like, hey, do you want, like, you should probably be the one to do this interview. I don't think anyone in our group is qualified. So it was like, yeah, I'll go on conservative talk radio. But you know, and I was given a speech about Bill Cunningham to prepare, you know, like okay, this is the guy who is the jerk. He is the one who is going to throw stuff in your face, and he's going to be like super aggressive and I mean, honestly, like, he was a little more than Scott Sloan, but really not much. I mean, it was a little bit more of a contentious conversation, but I still I didn't really get the impression that there was any kind of hate in that guy's heart or anything like that. And what that conversation actually was about was the directive that the Obama administration sent down to schools about how they should treat students in light of Title IX. And of course, his whole argument again was the whole libertarian thing, like the federal government shouldn't be telling schools what to do, but I don't think people should be bullied or whatever like that. And I'm like, well, they are, so what are you going to do about that, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that was a far less contentious conversation than and I mean, I've been on with Scott Sloan again. I was on with him not so long after the election too. So you know, they kind of had a bit of a sort of a relationship there, which I'm happy about. I think it's cool to sort of, you know, expose that viewpoint to the kind of people who listen, because, you know, the more they hear about it, the, you know, it's easier to humanize people.
Because what I have found over time is that the real, like, the people who just sort of blindly, oh, I'm against that because Jesus, or it's icky or whatever, and even though they're very vehement about it, when they realize that they know someone who belongs to that group that they're hating on, that's, if there's going to be a change, that's generally when it happens. So by being out there and being a face and say, look, here's me, I'm not the boogeyman, you know, I don't have 6 arms, I'm just human like you. If it's going to, you know, click on to somebody, that's the way it's going to happen, probably.
Yeah, well, there's a poll that I always cite. I actually went back and tried to find it, and I couldn't find it. It may not be on the site anymore, and I can't remember if it was Pew that did it, but it was one of the big companies that just does polling. This is what they do, and this was before the marriage equality decision. They were tracking the change of opinion over time, and you know, and it was like, of all of the people who changed their mind, the vast majority of them said that they changed their mind because they got to know someone who was gay, or found out that someone they loved was gay. And, you know, and obviously it's still plenty possible to hate someone you know, but it's a little harder to hate somebody that you know, when it becomes human, when you can sit down and have a conversation with someone. And it's hard because, you know, the people who are doing all of these hurtful things, obviously, you know, no one who does evil thinks of themselves as doing evil. They think they're doing good things. You know, it's tough because you don't want to say to a trans person in a vulnerable position, hey, won't you sit down across the table and have a pleasant conversation with this person who's trying to pass a law to dehumanize you? You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to obligate someone and tell them that they should feel like they have to do that. But those kinds of things often do help. So yeah, it's tough.
Absolutely.
Well, I know with some of the people that I have contact with here, going back to, you know, humanizing it, and a lot of them didn't realize that I could walk in one day and be fired and there's nothing I could do. And they're like, well, you can sue. And I'm like, no, I can't. I said, there's no protections in this state. Well, you can sue on the federal level. I'm like, no, there's no protections on the federal level either. And they're like, what? I said, yeah, I could walk in here tomorrow and my bosses could decide that because of me being a lesbian that they could fire me, and there's not a damn thing I could do. Now, theoretically, I could argue under the 14th Amendment, but I don't have the money to do that. And they're like, oh, I didn't.
Because, you know,
and that's what I said. I said, they were like, oh, we didn't know that. Well, that's wrong. And their minds changed. And I think, like, you going into the Lions Den, you know, has helped in that regard. But I think, too, and like with the 2 people in the clip that I played, it comes down to they just don't know.
Yeah.
You know, it's not them being your typical. I mean, granted, I have people that I have contacted with here that no matter what I'd say, they're just rednecks. Plain and simple. They don't give a flying fuck, you know. But there are people that just don't know, and I think that's where the outreach, where you know, having you come on and tell us more about it. Granted, we're talking to the choir here, but you know, hopefully somewhere down the road, someone will catch our episode and think more about it. I mean, this is going on 3 weeks now, and that specific part of that conversation is just eating away with me. And I'm hoping, you know, other people that may have heard it, it might be like, it's not just about, you know, boys wanting to go into the girls' bathroom.
The telling part of that was their biggest concern was that they had to travel further for sports.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that throws a whole. That's why I put that in there, because that throws a different context on it too. Is that to them it came down to the money that North Carolina was losing, and it came down to sports. And it's like, okay, well, North Carolina did it to themselves, first of all.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the individual people of North Carolina, but the government. You know, they did it to themselves. They weren't just like Indiana. I mean, they went through the same thing with the bill they tried to pass in SB 1062 in Arizona. These companies outright told them, you do this, we're pulling out. You can kiss our ass goodbye. We're going to go to another state that's going to honor our employees.
Yeah.
And basically the NCAA and the ACAA, the two major athletic associations for college, basically told them, you do this, we're pulling our bowl games. They warned them before they signed this bill, and North Carolina was like, no, you're not. Oh, yeah, they are. The NBA is the same way. They're hemming and hawing, I think, still about having any type of championship games there, or I think the All-Star game was next year, I think, was supposed to be there, and they've contemplating pulling that. So it does have consequences.
Yep.
But you know, people think the inconvenience of having to drive an extra 3 hours is bad. Well, I'm sorry. You know, having a friend that has to sit there and hold their fucking shit in because they can't use the proper restroom, I think is more of a problem.
Yeah.
Well, and that's, you know, unfortunately, that's part of what you have to do. You have to hit people where it hurts because, you know, we have to sort of acknowledge the reality that there are some people who aren't going to be swayed by the humanity argument because they fucking just plain don't care about trans people. So you start hitting them in the pocketbook. You start hitting them with things they do care about, and you force people to change. You know, and it sucks that you have to do that. It's pretty soul destroying that you have to do that. But you know, if that's what you have to do to get the legislation, to get the change, like, then, you know, that's just what it's got to be. And you know, what's really interesting is how the business community has sort of rallied around this, because, you know, generally speaking, the business community, you know, usually businesses were pretty progressive on, you know, extending benefits to same-sex couples and that kind of stuff, even when the law didn't obligate them to, or they had to jump through extra hoops to get same-sex domestic partners covered on insurance before marriage equality was a thing. That was a pretty common thing. But, you know, as far as trans stuff goes, it was pretty rare just a short time ago. And it's still kind of rare now, but it's a lot more common because people are recognizing, like, which is like, duh, it seems obvious, when you take care of your people, they tend to take care of your business. And, you know, happier employees are more productive employees. You know, I, as much of a cynical anti-capitalist as I am, I do feel a certain level of loyalty to the company that I work for because of how well they treat me. Especially in light of, you know, being trans and how, you know, explicitly protected I feel there. You know, I mean, I know there was someone who went to their supervisor and tried to tell their supervisor that I shouldn't be able to use the women's restroom. And that conversation ended with that person's supervisor. Like, our policy is that we let trans people use the bathroom here. That's the end of the story. So I didn't even hear about that until 6 or 8 months after it happened, because that supervisor happened to be talking to one of our supervisors, and, you know, word kind of got through. But, like, that conversation never even made it to HR because the supervisor was like, yeah, that's not how we do it here. So, you know, so that's a credit, you know, and the company that I work for was one of the companies that signed on to that big business leader thing saying that, you know, HB2 is not a good thing, because the company that I work for actually used to be headquartered in North Carolina. And they were like, you know, as a company, we are 100% against this. And you know, they're very proud of the fact that their bathroom policy is inclusive when it doesn't have to be, and that they cover transition surgeries for trans people. Like, those are very purposeful and explicit decisions that they made. And you know, the PayPal canceled, you know, a planned expansion of, I mean, I think it was going to be like 600 jobs or something like that that are going not to North Carolina now, because of that. And I think that's awesome. Like, you know, it sucks that you need that, but, you know, let's get it done however it needs to be done at this point.
There were several companies I had read that were going to open a new division or expand a division that they had, and they kind of went, nope, not doing that anymore. And you're right. That's where you got like people like McCrory, who is obviously a giant asshole. He's not going to care. Like, to him, it's, the people don't obviously matter. So that's what you have to do. And hit him where it hurts. And obviously it hurts because he's throwing a fucking temper tantrum now.
God, but that video was beautiful. Like, your tears sustain me and your cries are music to my ears. Like, the video of him like whining and complaining about the NCAA. Oh my God, it was so good.
He's just a total douchebag. Like, he doesn't give a shit about anybody but himself and his wealthy cronies, basically. So, I mean, this whole pitch in a fit because he lost the election, like, come on. Who does that? It's like, oh, I lost? Well, we're going to make sure you can't do anything. Bleh.
Right.
Like, get the man one of those giant fetish baby bottles and send it to him, because I think he really needs one. Maybe one of those cute little
big pacifier.
Yeah, big pacifier with a bonnet.
No, he needs the real tit.
I think he needs some rubber pants to go along with that too.
Yeah, I think so, for sure. And while he's at it, once he's situated, he can teach the faux Cheeto how to whine like a pro too, because he's not very good at that.
Which brings me to another question that you mentioned, that going forward, we all know that we're in for at least 2 years of a hell of a ride. And I've posted concerning my issues with, most people don't realize that if they do repeal Obamacare, I will basically be fucked because I will lose my insurance. There's some caveats in there that I may not, but the chances are I will. But for those of us that are gay or lesbian or trans, I mean, how or what can we do going at least through the next 2 years, because that's when the midterm elections are up, and if Trump even makes it that far, what can we do? How do we fight this without getting depressed?
Well,
Is that possible?
I think that's a valid response. Being depressed, but I mean, on a practical level, I think there's some really, really good articles that I've read about this, and honestly, I think one of the most important things to remember is that if you're doing things now, keep doing them. I think that a lot of people get the idea that because this happened, all of a sudden now what we do has to be amplified exponentially. And maybe that's the case. But the thing is, not everyone has the bandwidth to do that. I think if you were doing what you feel is your part before, the first and most important thing is to simply keep doing that. I think there are lots of really practical things that people have been saying you should do for a very long time, and I think a lot more people are starting to do those things, like call your representatives, because you're not going to speak to your actual representative. They're probably not going to hear what you say, but they do have congressional staffers ticking boxes saying we've gotten X amount of calls saying that people are against this thing, and X amount of calls saying that people are for this thing. And I mean, they do listen to that. There may be times where they don't, obviously, because their ideological position doesn't allow them to change their mind without committing career suicide. But those things do absolutely make a difference. They do listen to those things. There's a really great Twitter thread where someone who was an ex-congressional staffer was like, here's how this works, and here's how you can get your congressperson to actually hear what you have to say. And then so you can just Google that. And then the other thing is, I think a lot of people focus on federal laws and Congress and stuff like that, but state legislatures are really important too. You should know what your state legislature is doing. For example, a story that I heard that really, really kind of made that hit home for me was I went to a gathering of activists in Ohio and Columbus, and it was basically everyone who's anyone who does anything relating to LGBT stuff in Ohio. So it was like, direct support organizations, medical folks, social services, domestic violence, sexual assault, all of that sort of stuff. Anyone who does anything that serves the queer and trans community. And they had advertised that they were having special lunch guests. And those special lunch guests happened to be two Ohio State legislators. Two Ohio State legislators. Both were gay. One was Republican, one was Democrat. Very, very interesting dynamic. And so the Republican who was gay was telling a story about why Ohio does not have a RFRA law.
Yeah.
There was at one point a RFRA law that was proposed in the Ohio State legislature. And this legislator who, I guess like worked out at the same time as this other lawmaker, but never really spent more than a couple of seconds talking to him, knew that he was gay and proactively went to him and was like, look, I want you to know this isn't personal towards you. And this lawmaker was like, well, actually, here's why it is. Here's why it is personal, and here's why this is about me. And here are all of the bad things that are going to happen to the community as the result of us passing this law. Yeah. And this lawmaker, who was, I think, the one who actually wrote the RFRA law that was being proposed, was absolutely shocked because he legitimately thought he was doing a good thing for religious freedom. He had no idea that this was going to hurt the community.
Yeah.
And so as a result of this private conversation between these two lawmakers in the gym at the State House, the bill was killed in committee literally the next day. And awesome. that's why Ohio doesn't have a RFRA law. So little conversations like that, you have no idea what you're going to, the thing is, obviously, I don't want to feel like I'm obligating anyone to emotional labor. Because especially if you're a person who is in one of those positions, if you're a trans person or a queer person or a person of color or, part of any sort of marginalized group, you shouldn't feel obligated to be out on the front lines, beating the drum, yelling and screaming in people's faces and taking all of that heat and taking all of that hatred head on. That's the word I was looking for. But I think the people who do have the bandwidth to do those things should do those things because those things are important. And I think a lot of times that's where our allies come in because, just like we were talking about before, I wish that, generally speaking, people would listen to me as a trans person about the experiences that I have and how these things hurt me. But the simple fact is those people don't give a fuck what I have to say. But if it's another non-trans person who shares the same religious values as them, who generally shares the same values in other areas as them, turning around and saying to them, no, like that's not really what's the deal here. Like this is actually going to hurt people, that means something more. So I think, having the conversation is an important thing and not being afraid to have that conversation. And when you have that conversation, I think it's important to not insert yourself into that conversation. I think it's important to learn from what people in the community are saying about their experiences and what they need and repeat those things. There's a story that I tell a lot because what ends up happening is people get ideas. They say like, okay, I'm going to do this thing to help. And if that thing turns out to be something that's not super necessary or may actually be hurting, not helping, and you say like, you know what, maybe not the best idea, then obviously you look like an asshole because you're then criticizing and being mean to your allies. Right. But so what ends up happening is after Leila Alcorn died in Cincinnati, there was a member of the community here, not a trans person, who sort of made his name as a person who was like the fight for marriage equality was his thing. Right. And he decided after Leila Alcorn died that he was going to raise money for a memorial for Leila. While all of the organizations in the city who do anything with trans stuff were like, we don't need a memorial. We need money for these organizations to keep kids off the street and keep kids alive. This is what we desperately need. So at the time, The organization in the city that did the most stuff directly with trans people had a budget of about $4,000 for the year. And this guy decided that he was going to raise $2,500 for a memorial, basically plant a tree and get a rock engraved and put it in a park in Cincinnati, which is a nice idea.
Yeah.
But everyone in the community is like, dude, this is not what we need right now. Like, you're not helping here. And of course, everyone is yelling at us like, oh, he's trying to do this nice thing. Why are you being such a jerk to him when he's your ally and he's trying to help you? But he's not helping. He's not doing what the community needs. He's doing what seemed right to him and what looked good to everyone else. People are far more concerned a lot of times with looking good than doing good. And
that's a good point, actually.
And so he raised $2,500 for this memorial. This memorial has yet to surface 2 years later.
Oh, lovely.
So keep in mind, the money that he raised was more than half the annual budget of the main trans organization in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So in things like that happen all of the time. You know, people get this idea that like, ooh, I'm going to do this thing to help. They don't consult a member of the community. They don't, you know, it's not based on any expressed need that a person in the community has made. It's, I've decided this is how I'm going to help. And anyone who is against me is just being mean and pushing away their allies. And that's something, it happens all of the time. So that was a really, really big, long way to say avoid doing shit like that, because that's terrible. Because it's sometimes it feels like you're fighting both sides, right? You're fighting the people who are outwardly trying to hurt you and do bad things, and then you're also fighting the people who are supposed to be on your side, because their intentions are good, but their allyship is about them more than it is the people they're trying to help. And that's something that happens a lot.
Absolutely.
Well, it's funny you say that, because like when I first heard, you know, my friends speaking in that manner, the first thing I thought of is, well, this is fucking bullshit. I'm gonna get a hold of Callie and get her on the show, because one, okay, yes, I'm a lesbian. Okay, I've struggled with whether I'm a boy or girl when I was younger, but I have not experienced the things that you have experienced, and I'm basically an armchair activist because of where I live and the fact that I don't drive, I don't have the means to travel, so I can't network like you can network, that Deb can network. I'm basically stuck behind my computer screen, so I just post, you know, obnoxious articles 24/7. That's all I can do, other than maybe donating financially to organizations. That's why I wanted to have you on, because you've gone through this. You are in the trenches, so to speak. And it was funny because it was like, I heard that, the first thing I thought of was you. And I mean, I have other trans friends as well, but as far as public speaking, for lack of a better word, you know, you are the first person I thought of as far as someone that I have networked with. So it's like, I think it's important though, because like there have been other instances where people have hijacked a movement, whether it for their own personal gain or for misinformed, you know, causes, you know, like you said with this memorial. And it's just like, I think it's important that people, you know, like you said, they need to get in touch with the people that actually know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, that's, you know, that's kind of the whole point of what I do, is to try to sort of humanize things. Like that's why, you know, when you listen to my podcast, you hear me tell intensely personal stories, and I'm really, really open about everything that I've struggled with. And I'm fortunate in that, you know, to this point, most of my struggle has been sort of my internal, you know, figuring out who I am and figuring out how to sort of navigate the world. You know, I have not met with a lot of the sort of public hate and that kind of stuff that a lot of people do, because, you know, I happen to have a really amazing friend group. I have amazing people in my family. and those kinds of things. So, you know, I haven't experienced a lot of the things that a lot of people do. Like, I'm relatively privileged in that way. But I think that may be that's sort of the impetus for what I do, is because I recognize that I'm one of the lucky ones, and I want everyone to have the experience that I've had of coming out and having people, you know, interested in, you know, the things that I have to say and my experiences and how they can help, and those kind of things. And I feel like, you know, I've got whatever platform I have the means to buy equipment to do a podcast, or the means to travel to a convention and give a talk. And, you know, I have, you know, somewhat of a knack for public speaking and having conversations and stuff like that with people. So, like, why wouldn't I use that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I try to do. So it's nice to know that I've been successful a little bit on that level.
Well, I think it's important too. I mean, a lot of people say that, oh, you say too much on your podcast, or you say too much in your blog posts, and it's like, well, if I can't relate to people in a same or similar situation that I'm in, then I'm not doing any good. I mean, for like dealing with mental illness, I make no qualms. I'm nuts, okay? I have the fucking papers to prove it, okay? Yes, I'm gay. You know, I'm a lesbian. That's who I am. Deal with it. You know, and there's people that aren't afforded that, and that's what I like about when you personalize, you know, you have your stories, for lack of a better word, narratives. There we go. That humanizes you, and that humanizes the situation. That, you know, when you run into people that are, you know, ignorant of the situation, I think that it helps relate, you know, what the struggles we go through. I mean, I know, you know, as I said, talking to people, they didn't realize that I could just lose my job just like that, and there's nothing I could do.
Yeah.
And when I tell them, you know, hey, and I've had it happen. I mean, I worked for a major fast food chain, Wendy's. Okay, everybody used to crow about what such a wonderful guy Dave Thomas was. No, he was a fucking asshole. Okay, yeah, he was great for adoption if you were white and Christian, but he was totally against LGBT.
Yeah,
I saw it firsthand. I lost their promotion because they found out I was gay.
yeah, and that's,
You know,
and that's, you know, the validation that I receive every time I do something like that. You know, like when I you know, when I first you know, the first time I posted that I was pursuing weight loss surgery, you know, there's a stigma surrounding that, right? Because a lot of people think like, oh, you're taking the easy way out, you're just lazy, that kind of stuff. But like,
it's not the easy way out.
It's a medical problem, and it has a medical solution. And so I got like super detailed about how I came to that decision and why I decided to pursue that. And and I just put it out there, and you know, I left at the end. I was like, by the way, this is not a post soliciting medical advice. So if you have that for me, just leave it to yourself, you know. And I had somebody send me a private message after that saying, you know, this is a thing I've been thinking about too. I think I'm going to make that call now, you know. Or you know, we'll do an episode of the podcast just recently. An episode of the show, we had two pretty prominent members of the atheist community come on and talk about some gender issues that that they were having. And you know, and that every time you do that, you kill the stigma a little and you normalize it a little. And, you know, especially, you know, somebody like me, I mean, I don't have 1 million listeners or anything like that, but I mean, we get a few thousand downloads a week, you know, so that I have a platform. So, you know, chances are whenever I speak about an experience that I'm having, someone who's listening is having that experience too. And it's important for me that those people know that they're not alone, you know, because I'm in a position where I can speak about those things without feeling a lot of consequences for it. You know, I am out as out can be at work. There are people at work who listen to my show. There are people at work who have seen me speak on YouTube. And, you know, my family knows everything about who I am. And my girlfriend knows everything about who I am. And my friends know everything about who I am. So when I speak out like that, I'm not really putting myself in danger, aside from emotionally. Like I'm being a little vulnerable emotionally, but I'm not really risking anything important when I do that. But there are people listening who have the same sort of struggles who are not in that position. So for them to be able to hear someone else speaking openly and talking about those feelings and those thoughts that they've had too, it's super validating, and it's super important to those people. Like, wow, I finally hear somebody talking about me. You know, I thought I was the only one. And when you can destroy that idea, I think it happened to me when I first started listening to podcasts, and I would hear people talk about things and like, wow, I guess I'm not the only one, you know, and it's amazing that I've been sort of handed this platform that I can now do that for other people. And you know, it's, you know, I'm not being falsely modest here when I say, I mean, it's not just this thing that I've built from nothing. You know, I've had a lot of help from a lot of people who believe in what I do and who have helped me, you know, sort of, you know, push this thing to what it's become. And it's amazing. I love it.
And I think that whole "you're not alone" is so incredibly important. And I think that people don't realize just how big of an impact that can make for someone, and just how isolated someone can be in their nonconformity, for lack of a better term. So however somebody is different, you know, if even if it's as simple as just, you know, I don't know, like just anything that's different than everybody around you. If you've got that one thing that's a major difference, and you know, everybody that you see, that you work with, that you learn with, that you know, have fun with, they all are homogenous in that thing, and you're different. That's so incredibly alienating, even if you have, you know, friends and family and a job and all of that. And if coupled with that is that difference makes it that you could lose that family, those friends, that job, and all of that, that's like 100 times worse. So
yeah, I think it's really easy for people to dismiss the importance of that if they're not a person who's ever in that position. You know, like it makes me want to strangle someone every time I hear a Christian talk about like, it's not cool to be Christian in our society. You know, Christians are hated. You know, that kind of stuff. It's like yes, it must be awful to have 80% of the population of your country agree with you. Like,
even they have a difference, you know, of scripture, whatever. They'll talk about how the other isn't a Christian behind their back. But if some atheist walked up and said, you're all full of shit, they'll come right together and like, yeah, right?
Because you hear that conversation a lot, like when we talk about like representation in the media and how, like, you know, there aren't enough gay characters on TV, there aren't enough trans characters on TV, they're all stereotypes and caricatures. You know, people that are super dismissive of that, and it's like, well, you know, it's easy to say that when everyone on TV looks, sounds, and thinks like you. You know, yes. I seriously, it is so hard for me to describe exactly how amazing it was the first time I saw a competently played trans character in a show. There's a YouTube series called Her Story that is actually produced, directed, acted in, and written by a trans woman. And in her interactions with people, I saw myself. Like, those were things I was intimately familiar with, and I knew exactly what she was going through, you know. But it's like, you know, tell me it's hard to be you when you're watching the fucking 5,000th romance movie between boring straight white guy, boring straight white woman, you know what I mean? And I'm like, you know, where are the movies that are made about people like me? You know, there's a movie called Boy Meets Girl that if you're into romance movies and you like tearjerkers, it is a movie you will enjoy, as long as you're okay with alternative sexuality and gender representation. And it's a romantic comedy about a trans woman, and it, you know, it was the trans woman was actually played by a trans woman, which is fucking rare enough in the media. And there were so many little things in there that I picked up on that I identified with as part of my life experience that a lot of people probably wouldn't even notice if they didn't know a trans person or they weren't a trans person, like her measuring her boobs to see how much bigger they've gotten since she's started hormones and those kinds of things. And it's like, I mean, literally my girlfriend and I's second date was us watching that movie and sobbing in each other's arms when it was over with. And not just because it was a great movie, because it was like, wow, that's a real trans person I'm seeing there. I mean, obviously it's, it's fiction and it's acting, but like, that's a real person, that played by an actual trans person, who, her experiences and the way that she acts, like it's real.
It made sense as opposed to what someone else thought it should be.
Exactly. And that's everywhere. Like if we want to, take it back into something that's a little more important, seeing people who share our life experiences in government and in positions of power, even like in businesses and things like that. Like people are always so dismissive when people are celebrating, like, oh my gosh, this is the first Black head of a Fortune 500 company, or, those kinds of stuff. Like people are so dickishly dismissive of things like that. And it's like when you have never seen a person who shares any part of your life experience in a position like that, it's a big deal when it finally happens.
I can imagine. Yeah, oh, for sure. Well, we're coming up on the end here, ladies. So,
can I just give a final word before we go?
Absolutely, please.
Do it.
And Callie, if you're ever worried about not making a big enough of an impact there, I know you brought it up earlier, episode 4 or 5 or whatever it was there. I used to download your podcast when you first started out, and I'd put them on a CD and listen to them in my car on my way to work and back.
Yeah.
And I had to pull over on episode 4 or 5 when you just said, don't give up.
Yeah.
I was really close to giving up then, and now I'm me, and I wouldn't be me without that episode, maybe. So
yeah.
Oh.
And I've also learned don't listen to Callie when you're cooking, because you'll cry into your food. I learned that too.
You are not the only person who said that to me, actually.
I know. We had this discussion.
I can't meet you in person to give you a hug. You have no idea, sweetie.
I can't wait.
World's best hugger, right there.
Oh, I've heard.
Yes. Well, I've shared a little, like, vicariously.
I'm gonna get our Dalek on. All right, we're gonna do this. Okay?
Yes, absolutely.
So, Callie, while I've got you here on screen, why don't you tell us about your show and all of your other projects and where people can find your awesomeness?
Sweet. So the show is the Gaytheist Manifesto. The blog has the same name. The blog is on the Atheists network. The podcast is on iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, pretty much all of the relevant podcast platforms that you can find it on. Facebook.com/the Gaytheist Manifesto. I am Callie Wright on Facebook. I'm at Gaytheist Callie on Twitter. And I think, short of my phone number, that's pretty much it.
And it just gets great that every time you move your head a certain way, you have this fantastic halo as well. Oh. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. For those who will be listening without video later, there's a ceiling fan behind her, and every time she moves her head away from the light, it like envelops. Yeah, there we go. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We always have lots of good info to offer. So, as I say, it's been far too long. Goodness.
Yes.
Well, you usually do the show on I work a stupid second shift job, so hopefully that'll change sometime soon.
Yeah.
But thanks for having me. It's always fun talking with y'all. It's even when we're not necessarily talking about the funnest of things, we still find a way to laugh and have fun. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And Beth, why don't you tell us where we can find you?
Easiest way is on Twitter, which is Dune998. That connects to my blogs, which is Havoc and Chaos, which is on hiatus until probably after the first, when hopefully all my brain cells are back. And I also started a second blog, which deals primarily with science, specifically anti-vaccination, which is becoming, I thought religious things were bad. Some of these anti-vaxxers are even worse. But that's iScience Do You, and that connects, they both connect to Facebook, which is Beth A. Hambridge.
Awesome.
That's the easiest way to find me.
And Sam, was there anything you wanted to promote?
I'm on hiatus for the most part there because I just got laid off and had to start a new job, but I'm working on a new creative project. I'm hoping to bring it out in the new year. It's called The Worst Show Ever, and it's literally the worst show ever. You'll hate yourself. But
Is it a podcast?
No, it's going to be a live YouTube video if I can pull it off. But I'm really hoping.
I was going to say you'll have competition because my co-host does a spin-off podcast with Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah, called the SJW Circle Jerk, and they have laid claim to the title "The Worst Podcast Ever." They actually own that and promote themselves as that. So I was going to say you might have some tough competition there.
I'll have to see.
Well, and of course, I can be usually found Sunday mornings at 12:05 a.m. on Holy Crap, the vlogcast. I did miss last night because my husband had a Christmas party and he never drinks and he was having fun getting wasted with his friends. So I didn't make him leave at midnight like a pumpkin. We stayed till like 1 o'clock playing Cards Against Humanity. So my apologies, I'm not on last night's show, but normally I am. So that's you can find that if you Google the host, the Shujin Tribble, who is everywhere, or you can find it at holycrapthevlogcast.com, Holy Crap the Vlogcast on Facebook. We have a page. 6 to 8 of us sit around on Sunday mornings and talk about whatever the hell Shujin thinks we should talk about that week, but it's usually secular or atheist related for the most part. And every 10th episodes we swear our fucking heads off, so we do that on this channel all the time, but coming up, next week we're taking the week off because it's Boxing Day and Jesus Day and all that shit. So we're gonna skip next week. We will be back on January the 2nd, and we're really excited to have Elishba Zaramin come on. For those who don't know her, and I hate doing this, she's the wife of so-and-so, but she is the wife of Ali Rizvi, who's also a prominent ex-Muslim. But she is a kick-ass woman in her own right. She is an ex-Muslim activist who is mouthpiece than I am, which is awesome. She gets kicked off Facebook for a month, at least every other month, because Pakistani manifestos, and I love it. So she's going to come and we're going to talk about Islam and feminism and all of that fun stuff. They're not so fun. And she's also a new mom, which is awesome, because if you thought she was really passionate before, she now has a daughter. So all of you misogynist assholes out there better run for cover. She was a force to be reckoned with before she had a little girl. Now just anyway, that's on January 2nd. And on January 7th, as long as somebody doesn't chicken out, I will be having a debate on the channel, which will be moderated by the Dave Foda. A guy by the name of Eric. Damn, what the hell's his last name now? Jewel. That's right. Sorry, brain fart. This guy by the name of Eric Jewel, who has a YouTube channel, fancies himself this amazing debater. He's an old Earth creationist. You're interesting, but acts like a young Earth creationist, and I think he just throws in the old Earth part to throw people off. I don't know. But yeah, he said he's from the crazy group too, just and he apparently will agree to debate me. He has, but he's really, really slow with replies. So every time I think, oh, he bailed, like 3 days later, he'll reply and say, okay, something. So that's supposed to be January 7th. I'm still waiting for him to tell me what time of the evening would be best, but we will see. But I will keep people posted on that. If he does it, it's going to be fun. He was running around saying that no atheist was brave enough to challenge him, and of course, so I did. And yeah. So,
Of course.
I know. So yeah, looking forward to that. Should be a lot of fun. And as I say, we'll keep people posted on developments with that because we don't have a time yet, but we got a few days before that yet. So other than that, of course, we always like to promote the Taylor Scholarship at the Whitefields Educational Foundation.
Absolutely.
If anybody is unaware, Whitefields Educational Foundation is a group out of Utah who provide counseling services for people who are leaving or questioning religion. And the Taylor Scholarship was founded by David Michael, who one time ran the My Book of Mormon podcast. And it is a funds provided for people who need counseling but can't afford to actually pay for the counseling. So if you feel like donating to something, it's something that we definitely support. And you can find that at whitefieldseducational.org/My Book of Mormon podcast, but we always put a link in the show notes anyway. So definitely a cause worth supporting. So other than that, we got the big old fake Christian holiday coming up because we all know it's really stolen from the pagans and all of that fun stuff. It was Mary was a little bit of a bad girl holiday. But anyway, so for all of you that do stuff on that day, we hope you have a wonderful holiday, whatever holiday you may or may not celebrate. I am actually having a bunch of heathens over, and we're going to play Cards Against Humanity and drink, and it's going to be fun for sure. So until next week, or not next week,
we should tape it for the show. We should tape the party.
We might tape something. We'll see. Not everybody wants their drunken selves all over YouTube. I'm just saying. Yeah, well, maybe we'll get Uncle Arno to drink some more. Yeah, there we go. So we will not be here next week. 2 weeks. Alishpa's Armin. We're really looking forward to it. And until then, I will leave everybody as we always do with Dave Foda's only creed suitable for humankind. Have a happy whatever holiday it is that you want to celebrate, folks.
I know the truth and power of reason and of rational thinking, and I will use them to my advantage. I know the truth and power of educating myself and of expanding my intellectual boundaries, and I will educate myself. I know the truth and power of vanquishing ignorance, and I will do so whenever the opportunity presents itself. I know the truth and power of morality without supervision, and of true and accurate righteousness. I know the truth and power of obliterating tyranny, be it intellectual, emotional, or philosophical, and will work toward that goal whenever and however possible. I know the truth and power of human ingenuity. I know the truth and power of human compassion, and I will be mindful of the welfare of others. I know the truth and power of equality and fairness for all living things. I know the truth and power of the importance of our families, our friends, and our fellow men and women. I know the truth and power of human stewardship of our lands, our waters, and our skies, and I will try to act to preserve our environment. I know the truth and power of the sciences of mathematics, of physics, and of chemistry, and of the important role of these disciplines in understanding the workings of this cosmos. I know the truth and power of the rejection of all notions or beliefs that reside in the supernatural or the superstitious. and of those notions or beliefs that we are not supposed to be able to explain. And I know that these rejections are necessary for humankind's survival. I am a human being with a free mind, liberated from irrational influence and from unreasonable dogma.